There we go. All right. Zion seems to have a new mentality this offseason. So does he need to expand his game? And yes, he is working on his jumper. Plus your questions answered. It's a live episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, a live edition of Locked On Pelicans. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on a live show. It's Wednesday night, 7 p.m. We normally do these on Thursdays at 7 p.m., but the Pelicans have a summer league game. So we'll be back to the usual schedule next week. And thank you, of course, for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. Or maybe it's like your second listen after being your first listen today, whatever it might be. I'm excited you're here. We're the #1 Pelicans podcast. We're here Monday through Friday. No one else coming to you like this, giving you everything you want to know about the team. And I'm excited. I love these live shows. I love seeing everyone in here. So thank you for being part of the day. If you want to support the channel, become an everydayer. I see a couple of y'all saying that in there. And I am very excited to see that. So we'll get into everything here. I want to talk a little bit about Zion in the beginning, and then basically the way these work is I'll talk for the first segment, go to a break, come back. The next two segments are answering your questions, but I want to say hi to everybody in here. James Franklin says, what's up? Jake, hello. ABJ504 literally writes comment almost like every single day, right? The most consistent person. If we had Locked On Pelicans Listeners Awards, he would be getting one. Uli Dooley says, hello. Matt Levine says, almost an everydayer. That counts. Kevin Byers is excited to be here, ready to contribute. I love the energy. Denzel Allen, Zion MVP loading, correct. Oh, Locked On Saints. Hello, Ross. Ross and I were out. We've been hanging out a bunch, actually. I was tired on Sunday after hanging out with him. Trey says, Jake, the show is great. Thank you. Ronald nods says, what up, Jake? I'm back. No technical difficulties today. I think I figured out what happened last time, so we're going to keep it pretty easy here. Benoit Robinson, every dayer here. I love to see that. So awesome. So let's dive into the Zion shot selection and give me your thoughts in the comments, and quick kind of housekeeping before we get into that. Don't spam the comments, please. I'll just ban you from the channel, make it really easy because that's simpler than trying to delete it. Don't do that. Ask your question. If you really have a burning question, wait till the second or third segments when we get to that part of it. Otherwise, I might miss it. But if you want to contribute, give me your comment in there. Everyone chat amongst yourselves. It's going to be a lot of fun here. And again, we do these every single week over the summer right now. Also, I've talked to Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints a little bit about how we can have some fun with these with both of our shows. Matt, ask me that. Bring that up later, because that's a funny comment, and I remember that very, very clearly. So this was reported by Rick Bucher, who's not the most reputable NBA analyst anymore, that Zion has no interest in working on his jumper, expanding his game, or anything like that. So off of the bat, that's garbage. It's the hip term to say is that's cap, right? Did I use that correctly? Like, that's a straight up lie. That's incorrect. I'm at every single game, and trust me, you see him working on his jumper. If you get to the arena early, you might see him warm up before a game, and you'll see him working on his jumper. So that's not true. You know, someone had tweeted at me saying, like, you know, Zion maybe is interested in being a basketball player and isn't interested in doing some of the work involved with that. I think like that's kind of fair to say, though it sounds like his comments from the other day show that mentality's changing. And that's why we talked about it in yesterday's show. I think you are seeing some growth with him. There's definitely been immaturity with him. Does he attack and handle his rehab and things like that as well as he should? And look, the answer to that is no, he's not perfect. So those are things he can fix and work on. And I think he's doing all of that. But to say he's like not working on his jumper is just foolish and incorrect. Something that literally anyone can go to the arena and see. You literally can just get there an hour early. They open the doors an hour and a half early, and you'll see Zion shooting jumpers. So to say he's not interested in doing that when you can just go to a public place and see that, like, get out of here with some of that. I think it's a more interesting question to say, does he need one? Does he need a jumper? And look, I'm going to say something that's going to upset y'all, but let me get through this. We can talk more about it in the next segment too. He does not need a jumper. He does not need a jumper. If he gets a jumper, if he expands his bag, if he expands the offensive arsenal, that's only a good thing. I think we can comfortably say he doesn't really have a jumper now, right? Do y'all agree with that? Jake Warren says it great here. Why would he shoot jumpers when he knows he can bully people down low? Thank you. This is a guy who last year, I don't even need to look up the stats, I know them off the top of my head, 26 points, 7 rebounds, 4.6 assists, and he shot 61% from the field. At the free throw line, he shot 71.4%, which not good, but a career high for him on 8.6 attempts per game. This dude shot 72% at the rim. So from 0 to 3 feet, which is the restricted area, he shot 72%. He shot from 3 to 10 feet, 44%. His career number right there is 41.3. A mid-range jumper, 10 to 16 feet, right? 50%, okay? And then long mid-range, 0%, because he basically didn't take any of those. Look at the percentages there, and you can break this down in a way for you to really understand. And you heard me talk about it yesterday. It's points per play, points per shot, points per possession. It's a way of kind of equalizing things when you account for pace. So if a 2-pointer at the rim is worth 2 points, correct? You do 2 times the shooting percentage there to kind of get the yield of it, 0.72. That comes to 1.44 points per shot attempt at the rim, and that's not even counting and ones and fouls and things like that, which he gets. 1.44 from his best mid-range spot, right? I don't even need to do the math on a calculator for this. Of 10 to 16 feet, he shoots 50%. On twos, that's 1 point. That's 0.44 less than what he does at the rim. Hold on, we're building to another point here because I know what you're going to say here. It's a less efficient shot. If you're telling me you want Zion shooting mid-rangers and things like that, you're making him a worse version of himself. The way this guy is dominant is by getting to the rim and attacking the basket and putting pressure on a defense that way. If you make him a jump shooter, he becomes significantly more inefficient, and he just won't be the same player. If you took some of those shots away at the rim and put him more in mid-range, he's not averaging 26 points per game. It would be down by a lot. It might be under 20. In fact, it would be, because you get fouled more when you're in the restricted area. We all talk about how Zion should get more foul calls and go to the free throw line more than he does. It's because of where he's playing and his playing style. There are reasons for him to have jumpers, right? Sometimes they wall it off. He struggles a little bit with length. Look at him playing teams like the Bucks with a lot of length and long arms and things like that kind of take away the rim. So if you hit that wall of defenders, other things like that, then yeah, you need to have some other moves here. Izzle Channel, don't keep spamming the chat. That's the one thing I don't want people to do here, and I don't want to have to ban you from all of this. So we'll get to the questions in a minute, and if I don't answer it right away, ask it in a couple of minutes, or I might not get to it. So, all right, that's like very, very simple here. So that's why I don't think he needs a jumper. It doesn't mean he shouldn't be working on it. It doesn't mean he shouldn't have other moves, but his greatest trait is to get to the rim and try and attack and put pressure on the defense. You know, I've seen people try and compare this to Blake Griffin, right? Like he kind of elongated his career and stuff. Man, he kind of sucked after a period of time. When he started shooting more threes, all of his numbers went down significantly. So yeah, it's great he has a long career, but if you're not an efficient or effective player, look, that's good for the player. Get a couple more dollars, stay in the league longer. But it's not like the teams wanted him and were making him a focal point of it, right? You become a role player then. No one wants to see Zion Williamson as a role player. You know, could it elongate a season? Could it keep it healthy? I see a couple of people saying that in here. You know, that I don't know, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. If you look at Zion's injuries, you know, the hamstring came from him just dribbling the ball up the court. That really had nothing to do with him banging down low. That likely has to do with stretching, with the work he puts in during the season to, you know, work on like muscle flexibility and those kind of things. It's not because of a physical style of play. So I don't want Zion to do what he does, like, in another way. Like, be your best self. And if that means you have a shorter career, like, that's a choice that he needs to look at. I want the players on the team I root for, the team I coach, or the team I would be a GM of, and go and be the best, right? Like, go and be the best. That's the key to it, right? A great pay him the max deal that Zion's on. And so when people are like, he needs to take more threes, like, take threes when they're there, right? When it works within the flow of the offense, or they're like, yeah, he needs to take mid-rangers instead of attacking the rim. Not when you score 72% of the time at the rim. I'm not religious. There's a story in the Bible. Is it the parable of the talents or something like that, right? Someone might be able to like explain that a little bit more, but I've heard that told before, and I'm probably butchering this here, but right? Like, it's like, use those, you know, what you have to the best of your ability. You can bury them in the ground and then they just do nothing. That's what you're asking Zion to do if he is shooting more mid-rangers. Take him when they're there. Take him in the right opportunities. But let's not add significantly more. I don't think it's going to do much, and I don't like that Blake Griffin analogy to it. But he is working on it, because he should. If you have that in your bag, a turnaround jumper to create some space when that hasn't been happening for you, which is rare because he always gets space and can score, yeah, you use it then. So he should work on it. He should have a jumper. He should not be taking significantly more jumpers until he can't score at the rim like he does. And so that's what I think. Let me know in the comments over here if you agree or disagree. And let's start to get to your questions, because I see a lot of them there. We'll answer whether Zion's biggest weakness is on defense. And we'll get into all of that coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Before we get to all of your questions here in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans, I'm excited to tell you about BetterHelp, because look, I've benefited from therapy a lot. When life gets tough, when you don't have a playbook for it and you just need to kind of figure out what to do, therapy can be really helpful. Whether it's kind of learning more about yourself, whether it's kind of examining different roads and paths you can go to, or to try and just change some behavior, therapy is really useful. Or even if you just want someone to vent to listen to you, that can also be incredibly, incredibly important. And that's why I like BetterHelp. It lets you get all of that, but it's around your schedule. I don't have time to go drive to a doctor's office, to wait in the waiting room, then go see them, then drive home. And this hour appointment all of a sudden is now 2.5 hours. I don't have time in my day for that. Sometimes I need it early in the morning. Sometimes it's kind of after normal working hours. And BetterHelp is entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. So just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. These type of decisions can change your life. So let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get started. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday. No one else comes to you like this. The #1 Pelicans podcast, giving you all the insight you want and interacting with y'all here, answering your questions. The next 2 segments of the show are about you. So we're going to answer all your questions. We'll probably go about 10 minutes here in this segment, and then we can go longer in the next one, is how I tend to do these. So let me know in the comments down below, by the way, if you're an everydayer, the best way to support the channel. And for your second listen today, if you don't, You should be listening to the Locked On Saints podcast because Ross Jackson is an awesome host, an awesome person. We got you covered on everything, basketball, football, everything you need to know. There's a Locked On LSU as well. So let's get into your questions here in the Locked On Pelicans chat and everything here. Let's get this one out of the way because he really wants it answered. Izzle Channel says, do you think Zion Williamson's defense is his weakest trait on court? So his weakest trait on court is not being on the court, right? Like it's really as simple as like the biggest weakness is availability and everything that goes into that. And if you want to know why I think things might be different for him this year, go listen to the show that I did yesterday where we talked about how I think he could have an MVP season coming if he manages to stay healthy. And it feels like it's because of what you did. What's making me laugh is Matt Levine here, and I'll tell that story in a minute. What I do for the listeners, right, Matt? So if he can be on the court and has a mentality change, that's big. That's the number one thing. The second part is defense. Yeah, I do think last year in the limited games that he played was the best we had seen him defensively. He's actually, I think, a decent one-on-one defender. And I think he can do some good things there in terms of like team defense, help defense. Yeah, he's not going to be the same shot blocker that he was in college at Duke since you're playing against NBA players and not like at times complete scrub players who don't even make summer league. But I don't think he's bad defensively. He needs to work on that a little bit, but I don't think he's like a defensive liability like he was really at that point. The biggest thing for him is be on the court. If he's on the court, as I said yesterday, literally all of the noise goes away. Simple as that. And everything just kind of calms down. And so that's the most important thing. But defense, yeah, would be like a second. Like he's really good. 26, 7, 4.5 per game last season. And like, if he had that for a whole season, he's on an all-NBA team. He starts the All-Star game. And if the Pelicans are winning, he's going to be in the MVP conversation. If he had that for his career, those were his averages, he's a lock for to be a Hall of Famer. Like he's a really good player. You don't need to, change a ton about him. And he's good, as is already. ABJ 504. Yes, I know personally, I know you are an everydayer here. So I am not concerned about that. I appreciate you. You also not only listen every day, but comment every day. So keeping on the theme here, this one comes from Jock. What's the minimum amount of games Zion has to play in order for the Pelicans to keep him next year over 53? Like, I don't think even if he plays like 30, they would necessarily like boot him out here. I think it depends on the injuries and what happens. Like if he wants to kind of change the narrative around him, it's probably like 65 games. You got to play 3/4 of the season. There's going to be some days for rest. There's going to be some little things that come up here and there. But if the Pelicans want to be in contention, like it's 65. Like, look, they have explored moving him. They have. Look, they explore also moving every player on their roster as you kind of leave no stone unturned and do your due diligence with your roster to try and improve it. So I don't think, and every team does that. It's not like breaking news to say something like that. But, I think they're going to have serious questions about completely turning things around if he just can't stay healthy next year. But I don't think that is like a make or break thing necessarily. The way I've described it is this: like you trade him, you're not going to get a player that has the ceiling that he does, the amount of talent that he does back. I'm willing to, if I were the GM, if I'm David Griffin, let's say, I'm going to get fired believing in Zion Williamson versus believing in someone else because Zion's talent is that great. And it's more of a sure thing than anything else that you could go get. So I'm kind of going to go down with the Zion ship if that's what it has to do, believing in this. And like, if that's the case, then so be it, but that's a risk that you have to take. And I'm also not the one in danger of potentially losing my job. So it's easy for me to say things like that. Ronald Nod asks, hey, Jake, do the Pelicans have one more move left to make this offseason? They kind of have two-ish moves. Can I say like 1.5 moves left? They have an open roster spot that they potentially need to fill. That's going to be a vet minimum somewhere. And then they have a trade to make too. They're over the luxury tax. They would like to be below the luxury tax, I believe. So they're going to look to trade Kyra Lewis Jr., or they're going to look to trade Jonas Valanciunas. We've talked a lot about trading Jonas Valanciunas. They'll explore to try and, upgrade at the center position. And I'd reported their interest, in guys like Jared Allen, doing a show on all of that, literally the day before all that news came out, that they called about Jared Allen, playing that one pretty well. And I do think they would like to upgrade that position, just they don't feel Jonas is mobile enough. He also needs to kind of be a high usage guy. Like, you got to get him the ball and cook down low, whereas someone like Jared Allen can be an offensive threat by being a lob threat. So kind of working off ball. If you don't put a body on him, they'll just lob it up. He flushes it down, but he doesn't need to have the ball in his hands, whereas Valanciunas kind of does. So I think they'd like to upgrade at that position. In terms of Kyra, it'd be a salary dump. You might even have to attach assets to him to kind of move off of him. So those are really like the things they're looking to do. I don't see a big trade for Damian Lillard coming. If you could do it for, and I did a show on this, guys that aren't Zion, B.I., Trey, you probably wouldn't include Herb Jones in that at this point, but Dyson Daniels, Jordan Hawkins, a bunch of first-round picks, CJ McCollum going to a third team. Like, I think they could do that deal. I think they might even do that deal here. I don't see a trade like that coming because that's just probably too hard to try and figure out, and we can't predict something like that. King T says, Jake, you've been working all year. Time for a vacay on the beach. Coming soon. We're still going to be 5 days a week through the end of this month, and probably starting July 1, I might drop it to 3 days a week. We'll still do the live shows on Thursday, though. There'll be a show, basically it'll be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If you want to listen to the live show or participate in the live show, it'll be Thursday night for the Friday show, like we normally do here. I will tell the Tracy's Watch Party story in a few minutes here. Benoit Robinson says, and this is kind of keeping in the theme here with Jonas Valanciunas, I'm afraid to lose Jonas with Zion's injury history. I mean, when Zion went down, they didn't use him. They didn't use him like they should, right? Like, that's, I think part of the problem here. If they were doing that, then I think it would be a different story, but I don't think they do. So that's part of the reason why I think they're looking to move him, is they just don't use him properly, and that's okay. They could. It would be better if they did, but they're not. So, what can you say here? Raphael Scheck-Snyder asks, Bull, question mark. Did a show on that. I actually think he's grown as a player. I like him more. It just doesn't fit what the Pelicans need right now. So I think that's kind of part of the problem. So, you could take a flyer on him, but he needs more time to develop. He was bad the second half of the season after being good the first half of the season. He needs to go out and play and make mistakes and go to a young, growing team that wants to take a flyer on him. Like, that is not the Pelicans' timeline or matching what they're trying to do right now. So I think that's kind of part of the problem here. Keeping in with Zion Williamson, Nola G asks, does it seem like Zion is taking CJ's criticism for motivation? I think he's taking all of the criticism for motivation, I think. And I think, that he has finally, something's clicked, it seems like, right? Like, something's clicked. Maybe it was the off-court drama, right? Maybe it was would they trade him for Scoot Henderson, right? I actually talked about this on Locked On NBA. I do our national show on Wednesdays. Go give that a listen if you haven't. We're going to break here in a second, then we'll answer more of your questions too. I said on that show, when you heard some of the Pelicans reported interest in Scoot Henderson, right? A lot of the qualities about it were not about him as a player on the court, right? It was, he's a leader. He takes care of his body. He is the first one in the gym, the last one out of the gym. We feel he's a guy that could be, a franchise cornerstone in terms of mentality. He's mentally tough. All of that stuff, right? Like, almost the opposite in a sense of what we've seen from Zion Williamson. And I wonder if that got through to him. CJ's comments, all the players will tell you they're not taking shots at their teammates. They should say that. But look, CJ was broken after that loss to the OKC Thunder, and very clearly, was like, oh, I need to, said some comments in the heat of the moment when he was emotional that were pointed at Zion and others. I think he has to have heard that. You would hope. If not, then no, things haven't clicked. Justin Sinceri says, I don't get this optimism about how something has clicked. Look, he said all of the right things. He said things in a way that he has not said before. You've got to back it up with actions because they're just words right now. What else are you supposed to do other than just take him at face value, I think. All right. Let's answer more of your questions. I'll give you a slight jersey update from what I can say. I'll tell you the Tracy story too, which is kind of funny here. I see one about Jordan Hawkins being a sixth man. There's a lot of questions in here that we can get to, so we'll talk about those more coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. But before we get to that, I'm excited to tell you about Birddogs because I've been wearing my Birddogs non-stop. Birddogs make you look good. The Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, and it gives your legs like a sculpted look. And they do the exact same thing as like the expensive Lululemons, but they fit way better. And they fit way better than regular shorts, which are made of like a stiff, restricting cotton. And Birddogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but it stretches, so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. So they feel. These are the most versatile pair of shorts and pants that you can find. I've been setting up the new studio. I've been out with friends too. I can go from one to the other. And I look perfect and I'm suited for the occasion. I got invited to a friend's pool the other day, last minute. I just went wearing my Birddogs that I had been in already. They're lightweight. They dry quickly. You can use them as pool shorts or something like that. So I jumped in the pool, came out, they dried off. Good to go. Don't need to worry about changing. I have the khaki pair. I have a light blue pair that has the lining in them that's done in like a coral. So there's like a pop of color and everything. You just look good when you wear these. It makes you feel good too. And I've basically replaced all of my shorts with the Birddog shorts. So if you want to give them a try, go to birddogs.com/lockedonnba or enter promo code LockedOnNBA for a free Yeti-style tumbler. That's birddogs.com/lockedonnba or promo code LockedOnNBA for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering the team exactly how you want, doing live shows, giving you the insight you can't get anywhere else. So if you want to support the channel, become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday and comment down below on YouTube. And again, if you are an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. We do these once a week. They'll be here on normally Thursdays at 7 p.m. unless there's like some sort of conflict, which, well, Thursday they have a Summer League game, so we're not going to do that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll be covering Summer League the rest of this week. We'll kind of debrief on Summer League early next week. Then we hit into the off season where your questions, mailbags, other things are going to be answered. So let me answer one of the things that I get the most, and that's a jersey question. They're refreshing at least the Reds this season. I don't love the new Reds. I've seen the new Reds. I think the Reds are their best uniform. Those are getting changed. I don't want to say any more than that. I think some people have talked about it. I've told you all that before. The Reds, I don't love them. There's some other changes coming for the future in different ways. Some of it's going to be league-wide, is what I've been told. Some of these jerseys are going to kind of try and tell a story across multiple seasons, I believe, which is going to be kind of a cool thing. I think I've seen one of the alternates for next season, too. If you want like a darker uniform, they'll have it. But based on the concepts I've seen, it's a little bit plain. But if you want like a real revolutionary jersey, like I don't think, from what I've seen some of the concepts that didn't get turned into like actual things. Those would be cool, but I don't think we're going to see like some of the things that y'all are hoping for. We'll see what if there's changes or something like that. So throw your questions in there. Someone asked about, and I just lost it, where about Jordan Hawkins becoming a sixth man. Like, I don't think his game is versatile enough to do that just yet, particularly if they keep Trey Murphy off on the bench, where he does have that kind of versatility, right? Like, he's got the inside game, the dunking game, he's got the 3-point shooting, and we saw him adding, a number of moves and a mid-ranger to his game as the season went on last year. Like, you really saw a lot of growth from Trey Murphy in his second season. I think he easily could be a 6 man of the year candidate if he has kind of a starring role to go out and be a scorer, because that's essentially what you've got to do to try and win 6 man of the year. It's got to be that, but he's not ready for all of that. Nola G says Zion looked sincere when he was on Gil's Arena podcast. Like, yeah, like he really, really did. And so I think that is one of those, it's why I kind of believe some of this, because what else are you supposed to do here, right? Like, I think that's the number one thing is, I can't assume that he is lying. I don't know if you'll get new Mardi Gras jerseys this year. That's going to be kind of something that I haven't seen. I don't know everything about the jerseys, though I do know a good bit here. Matt Levine had talked a lot about a Tracy story. When I wrote for Bourbon Street Shots, I'm going to try and tell this like very, very quickly. This would have been 2014. It was the first playoff series they had under Monty Williams, second playoff series technically, where they played the Warriors with Anthony Davis on the roster. And we were doing watch parties at Tracy's. We had a really good turnout for a lot of those. I think it was game 2, there was a dude who was wasted. He had been drinking very clearly all day. I think it was on like a Tuesday night, Tuesday or Thursday. It was a weeknight. Maybe it was a Monday. Might have been Monday. And he was just there like heckling the whole time, like screaming at Omer Asik. Not that we shouldn't scream about Omer Asik, but you have like 100 people there trying to watch the game, and this dude would not shut up and was kind of just like ruining like everybody's time, right? Like, he was drunk, he's kind of making a scene. So I was sitting at the table with people. Honestly, I don't remember the folks that I was talking to. I wish I did. And like, people were like telling him to quiet down. He's like, screw y'all. So I got up and I went over to him and I was like, dude, you got to stop. Like, you just got to stop. Sometimes you just got to be a little stern with people here. Like, I just had to put someone in timeout on the channel here for spamming the chat. Don't do that. That's the one thing I don't want y'all doing here, so that everyone can ask their questions. Or if I haven't answered your question, maybe I just don't want to answer that, and that's okay too. But we'll try and get to as many as we can. And so like, the guy just like grabbed me and like kind of wanted to start a fight. And before I could even do anything, and I promise y'all I was okay, he like 8 people basically just like jumped on him, and they eventually like threw him out, and he had a very, very rough day. But yeah, if we're at a watch party and I'm the host of it, I'm going to take care of y'all there. He was a complete mess. And there will be some live things that Ross Jackson, host of Locked On Saints, and I plan on doing this season. So it's going to be a lot of fun here. So throw your questions in the chat. We'll keep answering these for a little while longer here as I try and catch up on everything. It is professional streamers who can like look at the chat, do all of this. Like, that's kind of tough, right? Nola G says, is it possible to have a starting 5 of CJ, BI, Herb, Trey, Zion? Does that even make sense? I think you'll see that lineup, but like, Zion's not a 5. Herb at the 5 lineups have been very limited minutes, and I don't think they've been particularly effective. If they think they can get Herb at the 5 more and it would work, like, sure. The very, very, very limited data we have on that is not good. So I don't know when you would really be able to experiment with something like that, because that's the type of move that like might cost you a game. And the Pelicans, given everything, is very, very key. He played 2% according to the play-by-play data on Basketball Dash Reference, and I really would have to look in some other lineup combination data. 2% of the time, and even that actually feels like a high number for me. I think that lineup sounds great, but I don't think that's like something you can use a lot till it's like proven, and I don't know when they would have kind of the chance to prove some of that. ABJ504 says, do they have a way to get Jose and Hawk on the court together? Yeah, I think you'll see that. You'll see that with the second unit. Jose's going to get minutes. You would have to think he's like the first or second guard off the bench. We kind of forgot about him because he was injured last year. But, he's been a key part of the team. He's like my favorite player on the team in a sense. So he'll get minutes. And they ran him and CJ. They ran him with, Devontae Graham out there. We saw undersized lineups. Like, Hawkins is fine size-wise, so I think we'll see that. I don't know if that lineup's going to be good and who the remainder of it is, but I think you will definitely see that lineup out there. You would have to imagine you'll see Hawkins and Trey get a lot of minutes with Zion Williamson to create some spacing there for him, and I think that would be, a really important thing just to make his life a little bit easier. Guillermo Castillo says, besides the jump shot, don't you think Zion should get more footwork so he doesn't have to muscle his way to the rim and practice the two-man game with BI? I think his footwork's pretty good. He's got very, someone was like, oh, he needs, I think it was like the first comment in here. It might have been something like he needs to have, a lay-in game, an off-the-glass game. He has that. His finishing around the rim is elite. He's got a lot of touch there. I do think he has some of these things that y'all are saying. It's not just straight up freight train going down. You've seen the spin moves. You see some of the footwork and the burst that he has. I do think that he has some of what you're asking here. West Bank Rick says, who will be the starting ball handler? I don't like that question, and it's not a bad question. It's how do they kind of split the duties is what it is. They don't really have a pure point guard, right? This is something that I've talked a lot about. It's why people said they need a point guard. Yes and no. They need one because they don't have one. They have a lot of half ball handlers, 3/4 of a ball handler. If you're on a scale of 0 to 1, 1 being pure point, 1 being, say, a center who doesn't handle the ball, where would you put on that scale Brandon Ingram? 0.6, 0.75? Is he 60% of a ball handler? Is he 75% of one? Okay. Zion somewhere in that 50 to 75% range. CJ's in that range too. They have a lot of guys that handle the ball. So you add it all up, it kind of gives you that pure point. And it means you can also run a variety of different looks and different things to throw teams off. So I think you see point Zion at times. I think it's point Ingram at times, point CJ at times. It'll probably be point Herb Jones at times too. So I think that you see, not necessarily one guy is your main ball handler. I think it's kind of, it's like running back by committee, kind of point guard by committee with some of those things. Okay, we've got some really good questions here. Phil Gilroy asks, Jake, are you a golfer? I play golf. I actually play golf pretty regularly, but I am awful at it. So yeah, I'm a golfer, just not a very, very good one. Love the North Course at City Park for how cheap it is, and you don't have to. I don't feel bad being awful on that course there. Benoit Robinson asks, do you think that Trey's upcoming contract will break up the team? I would think at that point we wouldn't be able to re-sign CJ or Larry. So Trey's contract should be coming. He'll be extension eligible after this season. Could get it, then plays one more on his rookie year, so it kicks in 2 years from now. CJ and Larry are under contract during that. That's where I've talked a lot about this. There's a salary cap crisis coming up. And that's why, there was a report earlier in the summer that there's no way they keep this core together beyond 2 years. And it's because Trey's going to get the bag. Trey's going to get a max deal for coming off his rookie scale contract. I feel very confident of that unless something happens. So at that point, whether you're good or not, you are a deep tax team. And so that's why there's been some shelf life on this squad as is. Either you could be good or you could be bad. And so but you're going to have to break it up no matter what. And I think that's why they really looked at trying to bring in a guy like Scoot Henderson this year. Look, low rookie salary. You could maybe move off of one of the bigger salaries here, and it kind of resets that cap problem for you. I think it's also why they called about Damian Lillard. Look, if you got to break up the team in 2 years anyway, you may as well try and be as good as possible these next 2 years. You're seeing a lot of other teams in the NBA do that. We thought the new CBA would discourage some of what's actually happened, but they just realized in 2 years, no matter what, whether we're good or bad, we got to blow up the team. So we may as well go all in, spend the money, and then we'll deal with it in 2 years. So, yeah, that's going to have to happen for the Pelicans no matter what. I have a number of shows about their salary cap situation and all of that. If you want to know more about that, go watch those shows. We can kind of talk about those too. Yuli Dooley says CJ, Dyson, Hawkins, Larry Nance, and EJ second squad. I mean, yeah, but like you don't run like line changes like you do in hockey, right? You know, when we talk about the second unit, it's a rotation. They're in there with the starters doing other things as well. So like that is something to kind of keep in mind. You don't just get like that second unit. You know, you thread those guys in, you rotate them in with other players, and that's why you get a ton of different lineup combinations and things like that. Westbank Rick says, I really wish we would have traded for Dejounte Murray when he was Spurs. Yeah, I loved him. Like that was a guy that I think would have been great, but I don't know if they wanted to trade. I think 3 first-round picks for him was a lot. Lonnie Live, did we fail Jackson Hayes in development? I mean, I think a lot of the failure there is on Jackson Hayes too, right? Like, I think that's Jackson Hayes as well. I think, you know, part of it was with the team, and they did not use him to his strengths. Putting him in the short corner to kind of be an anchor three-point shooter threat was dumb. But I think a lot of that is on Jackson Hayes. Like, he had time to prove himself and never once did, right? Jock asks, who is the biggest leap this year for the Pelicans? You know, I think you'd argue it's Trey Murphy. If he starts, and I'm going to do a whole show on should Trey Murphy start, should Herb Jones start, that's probably coming in the next like week or two. You know, that is, I've been saying that show's coming for a while, so I need to do it. You know, like he's in line for a breakout year. Like he has a chance to win most improved. Like he is a scorer. If he can really get it together on defense, and he's above average on defense, I think that's a big step. You know, a guy who could kind of have a breakout year is Herb Jones. He's paid now. You know, confidence in him to shoot above 36% from 3 on a little bit more volume. That's like a real big significant step forward. I would love to see that. So yeah, that would be pretty cool too, I think. So I think it's one of those two guys that you would expect to take like a huge leap forward with those players. So let's go a little bit longer here. Let's go for like 7-8 more minutes. As we start to wrap up, we'll go around 50 minutes or so total here. So that's a little bit longer. So I'm missing a bunch of the questions, so keep throwing them here. Timothy Lewis just says, how much do you think Herb Jones improves this year after getting paid? I'll say the biggest thing for Herb Jones is I think they're going to use they're going to use him better offensively. They're going to make him more of a threat, even if the scoring and shooting isn't there. This is a guy that you can use in dribble handoff actions, right? You can have him as the ball handler, screening, and then kind of giving the ball, dumping it off to people and creating space that way. Like, I think that's a really useful thing. You know, he shot close to like 45% from 3 after the All-Star break last year. If that number stays like that, yeah, he's going to be in line for a big season, I think. You know, it's relative. He's not going to, when he's out there with CJ, BI, and Zion, like there's only one ball. And they all have high usage rates. So Herb will get his opportunities. He needs to make the most of the limited opportunities, I think, that he can have. Westbank Rick asks, if Trey starts, what would that lineup look like? I mean, you would just pop him in for Herb Jones. It would really be as simple as that. It's Jonas at center, Zion at the 4, you know, Trey at the 3, BI at the 2, and CJ at the 1. Like, that's it. And it's just more offense is what you're bringing in there. You're sacrificing defense for more offense. Kind of really as simple as that. More shooting. Trey is a much better shooter than Herb Jones is. Not as good defensively, but he offers more length at that position too. That can help rebounding things a little bit. So that, I think, is what you'd be looking for. Kevin Byers asked, not impressed with Dyson Daniels' shooting game. What you think, Jake? I mean, I'm not either, but I don't think he needs to be a shooter. We know that part was always going to be a work in progress for him. You know, that's not like a very big surprise, I think, that he's not a good shooter yet. That was always going to be the weakest aspect of his game. What I liked what we've seen from him on Summer League, and I was actually just on WWL TV talking about that, so that'll probably be on their sports section tonight, if you want to watch that on WWL Channel 4, that, you know, I like his aggression and getting downhill. He does look more confident out there. And, particularly in the game last night against the Phoenix Suns, he kind of like took what the defense gave him, to use the cliche of like he let the game come to him. And I liked that. He was aggressive when he needed to be, dishing to teammates when he needed to be. And I like that he realizes he's strong, he's tall, and he can get downhill and get to the rim and score that way. So I think he has things to him, but no, I'm not impressed with his shooting. I think that just takes time to come around. He seemed pretty confident in it, and I liked that about him though. So that was good. Jock asks, this is a good question. If things don't go as planned, will Willie Green be on the hot seat, or how long is his leash? I think he has a pretty long leash. I think Gail Benson loves, I know Gail Benson loves him. I think that he's a good coach. I'm excited to see what he can do now with his own kind of assistants and the people that he's brought in. And I just saw that question, and it was a good question too. It was like, who's replacing Teresa Weatherspoon's role? Look, they brought in, other names and new people, and James Borrego being the main one, I think is like a really big thing. There's going to be some shakeups with roles and things like that on the coaching staff, and Borrego coming in to kind of redesign the offense is a really important thing. So that's kind of right there with all of that. Matt Levine says, Jake, who's your all-time favorite Pel Hornet? I'll be honest, Jose Alvarado is really up there. I've got the signed game-worn jersey, which will be back behind me soon enough, hopefully this weekend. Love David West. I'm trying to, there's a couple, I like some of these random players. I freaking love Jason Smith. A couple of years ago, it was during the pandemic, I had him on before we were on YouTube to talk about that time he hip checked Blake Griffin in the Chris Paul return game. And that dude just went out and played hard, and I loved that. Those type of players, those aren't the fun best players out there. Those are awesome. But I kind of dig those hardworking, scrappy guys that are just so easy to root for. Jose falls into that. David West was kind of like that, but he was a good player, but hard nosed, go out and do things, basketball player. But I like that question. Everyone in the Pelican in the chat here, let me know. Thank you, Matt, for who your favorite Pelicans Hornets player is of all time. I'm kind of curious. Maybe we can do a whole show about. I might turn that into a whole show deeper into the offseason of give me your name and the reason why, and we'll just kind of read them off on the show and have your people out there. Jamal Mashburn, I see there. Peja, that's a good one. Anthony Davis, despite the way he kind of left here, I think that makes a ton of sense. He was really good. Jim Clemmer says, I'm not high on Sebron. If that's one of our players, we're not good enough. He's on a two-way deal. They might put him on the roster because they just have an extra roster spot and he'll be cheap. But I don't think he gets a ton of minutes. But sometimes you just simply need a body, right? Zazich here says, appreciate the show. Thank you for tuning in. Question, beyond just seeing him healthy and playing again, what are you looking forward to seeing Jose do this season? What and where are his growth opportunities? I think being a more consistent three-point shooter would be big. Yes, he can shoot is a thing, but it wasn't where you would have liked it to be this past season. So if he can have that three-point shot, that's, I think, probably the biggest thing for him. That'll keep you in the league a long time with everything else that he brings, the peskiness on defense, right? There's a limit to what he can do in the half court. But when he's picking up guys full court, when he's running around and kind of being a madman, that's useful. Doing the Grand Theft Alvarados and other things. But he shot 33.6% from three last year. That number's not good. That number needs to be higher for him to truly be effective with the rest of the offense and kind of make up for him being, unfortunately, undersized. So I think that's the type of biggest improvement that he needs to make. But other than that, be the energy guy here. You need to have a guy like that. So I think, he also just kind of elevates the team. They all love him, don't they? So I think that's a real big thing here too. Joshua Levere says, hey, Jake, just joining. Love the show. Thank you for tuning in, and take one or two more questions here. If you got them, throw them in the chat really quickly here. Joshua says, why does the media hate New Orleans so much, Jake? I think they hate New Orleans. I think if we were in other markets, you would see very similar things. Y'all don't see that because you're not paying attention to what people say about the Kings or other like bad teams, the Orlando Magic and other things like that, right? Like I think a lot of the stuff is just kind of like standard throughout the league. Like no one's saying good things about Charlotte. They're kind of crapping on Charlotte for the most part here, right? Like, so I think this is just kind of like normal, standard, and it's just you only see what's directed at your things. And look, I don't get into that stuff. Like I really didn't want to wade too much into like the Rick Bucher stuff because I'd rather not spend. Here's my take on a lot of this, and we can maybe end on this. I don't spend a lot of time responding to things. Like if there's big inconsistencies or things that are like flat out incorrect in the national media, like I don't care. They can say what they want. It doesn't change or impact anything. They can say Zion wants out. But if Zion doesn't actually want out and the Pelicans aren't going to trade him, none of it matters. Like none of it matters. Be all your blustery selves you want. And rather than spending every single show responding to that, right? I could do a whole show responding to Rick Bucher and be like, no, he's wrong, and tell you what I think. Why don't I talk about things that are more relevant, right? Like we spent the first segment and I touched on that briefly, basically saying Rick Bucher's wrong and then talking about Zion and expanding on that in a way that I think is more interesting. Not talking about, does he want to work on his jumper or not? And let's spend 15, 20, 30 minutes of my show doing that. Let's talk and have a discussion about, does he need the jumper? What does he need to add to his game, right? That's so much more interesting, I think. So I don't really care when people say all of these things wrong with the team. I'm just going to come in and do my show and give it to y'all straight, and we'll have much more interesting talk than just trying to go and like slay Rick Bucher and all of these other people. Because what they say ultimately does not matter. I'll be honest here. What I say does not matter. I don't run the team. I see people sometimes get upset with me when I say negative things, but sometimes things need to be negative. What I say on the show, man, this is all entertainment for you. So let's talk and have a discussion because we just love this team, right? It's like sitting at a bar with your friend, you're watching the game, you're talking about it. You have a group text with your friends, you're talking about the game. It's designed to fill up time in your life and to give you something you care about. But I don't control things. We don't control things, whether we're positive or negative with that. So I don't want to spend a lot of time responding to national media or spending my time doing it. There's people in local media that do that, and they don't give you a ton of real great insight onto what's going on with the team because they're just busy shooting down like wrong national narratives. I'd rather actually give you stuff that you can kind of dive into a little bit more. But Rick Bucher was wrong. That's why I think Locked On is great, because our format allows us to do all of that, and also because I have to do 5 shows a week. And if you think about it, that's 15 segments. It's a lot. I got to find good things to talk about with it all. Guillermo, I talked a little bit about the in-season tournament yesterday or the day before. I forget. I talked a little bit about it. I liked it. I like it. It's fine. Add some meaning to these kind of meaningless regular season games. And you know what? Like it's other things that I think work with that. Vegas is cool. Put some stuff there. They're going to use it as a test bed for like expansion and things like that too, I think. Kevin Byer says, best New Orleans NBA player, Pistol Pete. So yes, but Pistol Pete doesn't actually count for Pelicans/Hornets history. He's a Jazz player, and they took that history with them. Essentially, the New Orleans franchise started when the team started play at 2001, 99, 2000, whatever their first year was. So Pistol Pete doesn't count if you were to do like an all-time best Pelicans Hornets player from their time here. Noel G says, we'll end on this. What are the real chances Miss Benson goes in-house with a local TV deal? I think it's high eventually. I don't know if it'll be this season, and I think the Bally Sports stuff needs to get sorted out through bankruptcy and all of that stuff first. So that is probably at least a year away, but it could be kind of sooner than that. So it's coming. All right. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. Thank y'all. I say this all the time, right? Like I do this show because of you. There would be no show without you. And it's the #1 Pelican show by a mile because of the fan base and your passion and tuning in every single day. So become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday. It's the number one way you can support Locked On Pelicans and keep it here all the time for y'all. Or if you listen once a week, try listening twice a week. Up it, add one more show per week, and it helps grow the channel. And the other way you can do this to support the channel completely free, comment down below on YouTube. We do the live shows right now, at least in the off season, every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central. So we'll be back next week with all of that. If you haven't caught up on the week's worth of shows, go listen to them right now. Yeah, I know we can do this all day. We got an hour here. My normal show is like 24 minutes. We're 30 minutes over that. And that's because of y'all, because you're still here. I'm going to look at the numbers, and it's going to be like 800 people at some point tuned in, and that is insane. When they say New Orleans isn't a basketball city, that right there proves them wrong. So thank you all so much for showing up for your passion. You don't need to thank me. Thank each other instead of me, because this is all about you, and I truly mean that. And that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter for as long as Twitter exists still. I'll be back with y'all. Technically, this is Thursday's show, so I'll be back on Friday to recap the Pelicans' Summer League game, and we got more to come the rest of this week